What's up, everyone? This is Anthony Pompliano. Most of you know me as Pomp. You're listening to Off the Chain, simply the best podcast in crypto. Let's kick this thing off. Rong Chen is the founder of Elastos. In this conversation, we discuss working at Microsoft in the early days, building network operating systems, why the decentralized internet is important, how Elastos is pushing the pace of innovation, and where Rong thinks dapps may have gone wrong. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do as well. Sitting here with Rong, super excited to have this conversation. There's a lot of people excited that we're going to talk today, so thanks so much for coming to do this.
Well, thank you so much.
For sure. Let's jump right in. What's your background, kind of pre-Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, blockchain? What'd you do before?
Well, my background is I came to this country. I came to New York January 4th of 1984. That's when the internet named Internet from ARPANET. And also that's when Unix open source to universities. So I went to the University of Illinois to study operating systems. And ever since, it's been 35 years.
In 1984, you went to go study operating systems?
Yes, I did.
That's pretty good foresight.
Oh, it's a fluke because look back. At that time, I thought we were just studying, came to this country with more advanced computer science research. But on the other hand, I overlooked that was actually the year, if you look at Microsoft, Oracle, Sun Micro, and Apple, actually all founders were born in 55.
Really?
Right, all. Right? So you're just saying that's a generation of innovation. It's just born at the right time. I would put it this way.
Were you born in 55?
57, so
you're a little
years.
late.
Little, but then not too far. That's the thing. At that time, what I overlooked was we were saying, okay, everything is a given, should be naturally, that's what we study. Instead of seeing that's a great opportunity. I didn't see that part.
Yep.
To this day, I still regret.
I see. And so what did you do after school?
Then I went to Microsoft Research.
What was that like?
That's in 92, doing operating systems. And later on, I moved on to Internet Explorer, which is the browser. I was the 10th employee of Microsoft IE. And from there, we moved on naturally going to design.net.
What was Microsoft Research like? Like, what was that culture like?
Well, it's very open. At that time, 92 was very, very small because actually Xerox PARC, IBM Yorktown Heights, and AT&T, Bell Labs were the better known ones. And no one really want to go to Microsoft to do research at that point. But I ended up there just also by some accidents. Because of I was from China, I couldn't be hired by IBM, AT&T, or Xerox PARC. So because it was a communist country, right? And so Microsoft was my only not chosen choice, but looking back, I was really, really fortunate.
For sure.
To catch the wave of the whole, Windows, internet, everything.
For sure. You ever hang out with Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer?
Met a few times.
What are they like?
Well, Steve Ballmer's a very nice guy, actually.
He's a nice guy?
He is. And Bill Gates, nice to the employees, but kind of mean to executives.
So he was nice to the employees, but mean to the executives. And any funny stories that you have?
Well, at that time, because Microsoft was small, and all new hires got a chance to eat dinner at Bill Gates' house.
Wow.
At that time. And so I remember I went, right? Because the reason I went is because I want to see he was the richest guy in the world already at that time, 92. And so I was fascinated, we just, go to the richest guy's home and have dinner. And was very, very moderate. And the very first question, our new hires asking Bill was, is it really your home?
So he was the richest guy in the world in 1992, and you guys go to his house, and no one believed it was his house because it was
hardly any furniture.
Wow.
And also it's an old house.
Yeah, that's awesome. But like I think that's part of the beauty of him, right? The Warren Buffetts of the world, etc., is that they don't care about the material things.
Right. And also I also appreciate his mother did so much for United Way, and we follow suit, and we helped contribute to the cause.
That's awesome. All right, so at some point you moved to China, and you lived there for the last like 20 years or so?
Yeah, I returned back to China in year 2000 after we started the project called .NET, which I'll mention because .NET meaning we're going to design a operating system for the network instead of designing an operating system for the computer, for a device, right? Which is really my passion because I believe that's the real solution to solve the internet virus issues, DDoS attack issues, the piracy issues. But unfortunately, we have that dream, 99, which is literally 20 years ago, and which until today, it's still not being accepted by the community.
For sure. Where'd you live in China?
I live in Shanghai.
In Shanghai. What's that like right now?
Well, it's for the past 20 years, it's improved so much. It's a very modern metropolitan now. Yeah, with all the neon lights and stuff.
And I've never been, but the photos I've seen, it kind of looks a little bit like Las Vegas or like Times Square.
Yeah, maybe more lights.
Absolutely. And so what's the current situation on like the geopolitical front, right? So you've got I think here in the West, most people are educated by the mainstream media. The mainstream media has a very kind of specific perspective of China, both at the technology industry, but also kind of the political stuff that's going on.
Sure.
You lived there. You were on the ground. Like what was your general take in terms of how do the citizens interact with the government, and then how does technology companies and engineers play into all of that?
Well, the Chinese employees, right, engineers, they worked really extremely hard because of they have this mentality, because for the 30 years ago it was a relatively poor country. Open up, and if you see what it has today, it's catching up really, really fast because of the engineers working. They call it 996.
996?
So yeah, basically they work from 9 to 9 for 6 days a week.
Wow.
That's what it is, right?
From 9 to 9, 6 days a week. That's the work ethic.
Yeah. A lot of companies require, or most of the employees work that hard.
It is. There's a gentleman in Silicon Valley. I'm going to forget who wrote it, but they wrote a op-ed here in America, and they basically were pretty blatantly saying that China is outworking the United States, right?
By working hours, yes.
And they were talking about this idea of one, the amount of work, right, in terms of the hours. Two, a lot of people were actually living in like kind of company-sponsored facilities, right? So almost like dorm rooms, if you will, especially the younger engineers and things like that. And they were basically just talking about like, America can't get comfortable, right? And if you want innovation, there still has to be hard work involved with it. And if you go and you look at other places in the world, they may not have the same perspective we do in terms of work-life balance, all these kind of things that are popular in the U.S. now. That's not necessarily popular everywhere in the world, and it leads to very different kind of work cultures.
Yeah, I believe in a way that saying is true because of for the first generation, like me being the first generation immigrants, we work harder than most of the native borns, right? But let's say even in China, the second generation, especially the one-child policy, the kids tend to be more spoiled. So I'm not sure if this kind of mentality will last, but definitely for the time being, right? That's the case.
Got it. And so right now it's true, but demographics can change and things can definitely evolve. But it's interesting to think through. And then what is the kind of the whole blockchain in China situation, right? Because it seems like that changes quite often.
Right. Actually, I was surprised on the October 24th and actually made an announcement on 25th that, the government will go full throttle on blockchain, which is little surprised everyone. But looking at it, it's not quite out of the blue because of there's a saying, right? China is a big government instead of a smaller government in the United States. Big government meaning it has a lot of power, resources. And absolute power implies absolute corruption, which is true everywhere. In a way, the Chinese employees or the government are very efficient because even for government officials, they work Saturdays. You call them up, they come to have business meetings.
Really?
Right. So they don't really take a weekend off. But on the other hand, given the power, there are indeed some corruptions, red tape, and everywhere because of, let's say, so many so-called state-owned enterprises, not just necessarily government per se, but let's say a state-owned enterprise, high-speed rail, power grid, those companies are huge, like 1 million employees, 2 million employees.
Wow.
And also, if the CEO cannot fire the county level, let's say a power supplier, then where's those efficiency or where there's a corruption because of they can turn off your power, asking you for bribing
state-sanctioned mafias.
So then you can see if they do have blockchain and keep track of provenance and recording of the documents, then I do believe that'll streamline a lot of those red tapes.
Got it. And it sounds like they're not only interested in just cryptocurrencies, but also in blockchain for a whole bunch of different applications. But the one here in the U.S. that's really, I think, caught people's attention is this DCEP, right? The digital currency. What's your thoughts there?
Digital currency and electronic payment. If you've been to China for Alipay, Tencent Pay, like WeChat Pay, right? It's almost everywhere. And
this is just people use their mobile phones to pay.
Right. Basically, when I was when we're in China, it's a cashless society now. Basically, you go anywhere, you don't need to bring your wallet. You just bring your phone. That's all there is to it.
Amazing.
Yeah, very, very efficient. You pay peer to peer. You pay all the vendors. So given that that's the case, right? And the government asks the electronic payments to replace the paper bills. Then they're promoting something like in the airplane where there's no Wi-Fi signal, no mobile signal, you can still shake your phone and pay peer-to-peer with AirDrop, your virtual money.
Yeah.
Right? So then basically they don't promote cryptos. They promote something, you trust me, you trust the state-owned banks to have consortium chains. Then they're issuing those crypto currency, right, to replace not really replace, to kind of
like augment
or the Alipay and WeChat Pay.
So I buy that it's way more efficient, right? I buy that it can really help the user experience, etc. I think that the downside, though, is it could increase like the surveillance and the ability for whether it's the government or private enterprises to see what citizens are doing. Is that part of the conversation in China now?
That's not necessarily has anything to do with cryptos. If you've been to China, you see surveillance cameras almost.
It's pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But then that's really it's a different issue. It's not related to the blockchains.
Yeah. And part of my question is really, is that part of the conversation, right? Like, do citizens realize that, or are most citizens just, this is what I grew up in, this is all I know, and so it's normal?
Of course, all citizens are aware of you. If you just open your eyes, right, you see cameras. So then Asian culture is somewhat different from the Western culture. Because of if you go to Japan, you go to Korea, go to China, they all tend to be overcrowded historically for thousands of years. And so then kind of they live on the villages, they have a commune, one helping the other. More like group. They have sense of group instead of more individualism. Like being one person, like last blood. Can one person Rambo could save the world? That's kind of a different mentality.
For sure. As you think about this, you eventually moved on and started Elastos. What was the first time you ever saw blockchain or Bitcoin or crypto? Like how did you initially get interested in it?
Well, actually, I went back to China, started this network OS. As I said, I quit Microsoft for one simple reason, because Microsoft at that time decided to do a network OS, which I full-heartedly believe. But on the other hand, at that time, they want to do it in C#, like a Java equivalent, intermediate language, which I don't believe. I want it to be more fundamental. I want to do it in native CPU instructions. So then, because it's a different level of abstraction, I believe computer science has to go down to the metal, go down to the CPU level. That was the reason I went back to set up my own operating system venture and trying to design a network OS. And one thing lead to another. By 2012, I got some investment from Foxconn, which is
from Foxconn.
Foxconn, which is one of the biggest companies in the world, right? They make 100% of the iPhones assembly. Blue collar workers assemble all the iPhones, iPads, and also like a Kindle, ebooks and stuff. Foxconn does a lot of research as well, even though it's overshadowed by the workers. So at that time, I got some funding from them doing the industrial IoT, doing the smart home OS. So then we can make smart homes safer and protect the encryption, protect the privacy of citizens, right, or the users. But in around end of 2016, 2017, we ran into some issues. So I have to find alternative investments. There I found blockchain because of, for two things. One is because of the Ethereum at that point, and also Bitcoin price went up like crazy. Everyone learned the term. And also people start to raise funds using those cryptos. So when I was looking for funding, definitely that's something caught my eye. And when I study those crypto projects, right, and especially a lot of those so-called smart contract-based blockchain projects, they talked about dapps, they talk about ecosystems. And also when I researched on YouTube and what is Ethereum in one sentence, and the founder of Ethereum saying that's a world computer, right? So those jargons caught my eye because of what's a computer? I've been doing computers all my life, and we started from paper tapes, a core memory back in China, so which is really, really the fundamental old machine. And we've been doing ecosystems as a trained Microsoft operating system designer or architect. Because when you talk about Android, when you talk about iPhone, what do you say? You know, basically they build ecosystems, right? They build apps. So then I would study more about what is a world computer, what is a dapp, what is a ecosystem. Then I realized the blockchain world. Well, they are very innovative, but on the other hand, they're lacking of some fundamentals because of they're not trained to be the designer of a computer or a ecosystem. So that's where I find we have a chance.
Got it. And so what is Elastos today?
Elastos, just by name of it, right? Elastic compute.
Elastic compute. Okay,
Elastic compute. Actually, I named it in 2002.
Okay.
And Amazon came up coincidentally, Elastic compute, 2006.
Got it. What is elastic compute?
Elastic compute meaning virtual machines all over instead of physical machines. Basically, you spawn, you create virtual machines on demand. Instead of, because making a hardware computer, it takes resources, takes time. But if you make virtual computers on demand, which is setting up us in a completely different level, right? And so Elastos, because we've been working on this virtual machine since 2002. We've been working on this smart home network since 2012. And all we need is another really key piece of puzzle missing, which is the blockchain. Give us the decentralized IDs, give us the decentralized everything, so then we can build a decentralized web.
And so Elastos is literally Elastic OS, kind of putting those two words together?
Yeah.
Got it. And so when you get started, what was kind of the original idea in terms of what you could build? Was it one single product? Was it to go after the whole ecosystem? Like, how did you think about it?
At that time, we were going after the network computer.
Okay.
But in year 2000, network meaning the local area network. Let's say you have a room of 100 employees with 100 PCs. Can you manage them as a whole? Like if you look at the autonomous driving in a Mercedes-Benz modern vehicle, there are about 100 CPUs built in, right? Can you imagine, are they 100 computers, or are they just a single computer on four wheels? So that's a different perspective. And the one computer perspective have a better control over the controlling security, controlling the various issues. Yeah, that's when we started.
Got it. And so when you get started, one of the things I've heard you talk about in the past is this idea of like a smart web, right? Maybe talk us through how you define smart web and how that differs from that www web that we all know.
And a lot of people in the blockchain world talk about the value internet, saying the old internet is the information internet. I think there's a guy called Don Tapscott who gave a TED talk, right? He summed it up as the old internet, everything you share is a copy. You share on Facebook a photo, that's a copy of the photo. And the value internet, if I give you a Bitcoin, then I don't have it anymore. So that's has a scarcity, which is the of value. And then, but then on the other hand, the community is short from saying, if you give me a token, usually for a trade for goods, and currently the goods you trade are offline goods. Can you trade online virtual digital assets, right? People are talking about building a virtual economy, so then you can protect user data and trade user data. But trade user data, that's where we come in. If I give you a user data, the last internet giving you a copy, which a lot of piracy and doesn't have much value, even though you can keep the provenance, you can record this barcode or digital signature of the file on the blockchain, but you cannot protect the piracy or virus, then really you still don't have much value for the digital assets. To send a digital asset, you have to send code. You cannot just send a file being played by a media player, right? So if you send a binary code over, the binary runs and validates itself and check the blockchain, do you still own it? Let's say if I send you a binary code, which is encrypted my personal data, right? I send it to you. And if I sold it to you, you run it. I still have a copy on my hard drive. If I run it, and they say, okay, Ron, you don't have the right anymore, right? So that's where when you share value internet, really you're sharing code. When you have the information internet, right, that's www. When you run sharing code, we call it a smart web. Smartphone meaning the phone that runs apps. The internet runs dapps are the smart web.
Got it. And so that's smart web. Talk to me about, is it decentralized? Is it not decentralized? Like how do you think about building it, right? Because you described what the functionality of it is, but how do you think about actually building something like that?
We are actually, I'm glad you asked. We're really, really close because we have pretty much got everything built. The last big missing piece would be the browser and the website. The browser will be released first week of January. So basically in 3 weeks, we're going to release the browser. Basically reminding me of 93 when the Mosaic browser was released in January. Mark Andreessen. That's January of 93. Throughout 93, basically the University of Illinois set up the www web at that point. So we're really, really close from shipping the smart web browser.
But before we get to the browser, there's kind of 3 levels, as I understand, in terms of the stack of what you guys have built. Going after this idea of the smart web allows you to send value or code rather than the information web or www. What are those 3 kind of layers, if you will, to what you guys have already built? Because I think that framework, at least it helps me understand better as to why you think the smart web is so important.
At the fundamental layer, we do like a ELA token. That's the token we issued. Merge mine with Bitcoin, meaning the Bitcoin miners, when they update the software from Bitmain, actually they could merge mine. Basically, you don't spend extra power. You mine both ELA and BTC.
Okay, so explain this concept, because I don't think a lot of people have heard this before. Merge mining is, I'm a miner. I bought some hardware from Bitmain or whoever. I plug in my equipment. I get the internet hooked up. I get it ready to go. I start mining Bitcoin.
Right.
Where do you come into that? How do I
basically configure that software, because it's the feature, the latest feature is built in now.
Okay.
So then you turn it on, then you can get some tokens.
Got it. And when I'm mining on the Bitcoin blockchain and I'm validating those transactions and I'm securing the Bitcoin network, what am I doing on your end?
There's a set product. You also secure the ELA main chain and also mining the ELA tokens at the same time, right? Currently, there are about more than 50% of the Bitcoin miners also mine ELA tokens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which make us the third most powerful main chain in the world, the hash power wise.
And that hash power is approximately 50% of Bitcoin miners are not only securing and validating the Bitcoin chain, but they're also doing yours as well.
Yeah, when we step into your office, we just checked, it was a 52%.
52%, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's a very big number, actually.
It is a big number. So the reason why we have the main chain is because everyone believes in Bitcoin, and it's not being controlled. And given that main chain, we merge mine with Bitcoin, so we gain the trust, right? Of course, high confidence. No one. I mean, I wouldn't say no one. Very, very hard.
Well, and what I think you guys have done here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you've essentially said Bitcoin's miners make it incredibly secure and make it incredibly decentralized in nature. And so if we are able to incentivize or kind of go along with those same miners, then we'll be secure and we'll be decentralized as well. And so you're kind of rooting the decentralization and security of your blockchain in with the folks that are mining and validating the Bitcoin blockchain.
Right. And also we give the Bitcoin miners a higher calling, because they are helping us to secure the new internet, right? So new internet, what's the value of a new internet? Of course, if you look at the old www web, there's no IDs. So everyone could fake everyone else or impersonate or being a dog, you don't know. So given the decentralized ID, so on top of this main chain, we're building decentralized IDs. Currently, the Elastos decentralized ID is W3C compliant. And so given those IDs and also giving the main chain, so we can encrypt messages peer-to-peer.
Well, okay, so hold on. So you got the merge mining with Bitcoin, right? That's kind of that foundational layer. Then a second layer on top of that is this idea of a decentralized internet.
Correct.
Right? And internet involves identity and a whole bunch of other things. But the idea is you've got a blockchain. That blockchain is super secure. It is decentralized because you're basically riding along with Bitcoin's blockchain in terms of using their miners to help you. Right. You build a decentralized internet on top of that. And then there's a third layer, which is more around kind of governance and consensus.
Right. The second tier is actually it's a peer-to-peer network.
Okay.
It's very much like a FaceTime or a Skype or BitTorrent or Napster to start it. But all the old peer-to-peer network, they have a central website, right? So they're liable or they're controlling. Then can we make those central website being decentralized, rooted back inversely to the blockchain, right? They used to have a governing website. Now it's kind of put it the other way around.
The blockchain is what's
the blockchain
governing.
is the website, so it's not controlled by Apple or Microsoft.
Got it.
And there's another notion from '92 saying the network is the computer, from the inventor of Java programming language. That was a long time ago, right? And as I said, Microsoft.NET was trying to do a operating system for the network computer. And the second tier of our so-called carrier network or peer-to-peer, decentralized peer-to-peer network is literally building this new smart web computer. And to have this computer is decentralized, but yet on top of it, there are users. We hope to have billions of users, right? And also for this decentralized computer, we need administrators, right? This, let's say we decentralize the exchange. Who should be listed? Or when we have a new smart contracts or new governance model, algorithm, should we kick that in? So it's more like the First Amendment or Second Amendment, those communities, should we run this? Let's say currently we have a 4% inflation. Every 2 minutes we have 5 more tokens mined, right? Is that a good number? 4%, is that too high, too low? Should the community make a deep learning algorithm to adjust the inflation rate? So definitely those are governed by smart contracts or programs.
Okay.
And the administrator, the consensus decides to kick that in, right? That's the administrator of this smart web computer, of this world computer.
And who acts as the administrator?
Currently, we are going to kick off this election also by the first week, or by the end of this year, or by the first week of January. There are 12 seats, so anybody is welcome to run. Of course, you have to get the vote from the community, right? And 2/3 of the council members and vote will decide on whether we kick in another smart contracts to run this community.
Got it. And one of the things that I think you've talked a lot about is you've got this merge mining, you've got this decentralized internet, and then you've got kind of the cyber republic governance, but the decentralized internet services, right? This idea of flipping decentralization, in the crypto community, I think a lot of people talk about these dapps, right? These decentralized applications, and they run around and they say, I've got a decentralized application. And I always joke that Jeff Bezos controls the entire decentralized application market because everyone's building on top of AWS.
Correct.
So how decentralized can it actually be if you're just building on top of AWS?
Basically, in my opinion, a app, first of all, let's go back to the app. 84, when I first came to this country, at that point, Unix open sourced, right? Barely. Long time ago, 35 years ago. And at that time, there was no distinction between system developer and the app developer because in 84, there's literally almost no applications. Like TCP/IP is running in the user mode of Unix or Linux for that matter, right? But it's not really application in consumers' minds today. Because in consumers' minds, whatever runs on Android phone, on iPhone, that's an app. TCP/IP is part of the system. But Unix or Linux doesn't really distinguish whether you are a system programmer versus application programmer, kind of intertwined, mixed. So that's why we see a lot of viruses, because application pretend to be the system and taking advantage of the loopholes and shortcomings, then they steal user data, right? Then if we're saying Elastos computer, we build virtual machine. So that's another layer. The virtual machine runs apps. Apps runs inside virtual machine. Below virtual machine, above kernel, that's called a system software, which does not exist 35 years ago.
Okay.
But today, which is so obvious, right? And if you look at a lot of blockchain projects, they're basically still using the old web, using the old Linux, because they just do the recording of the hash on a smart contract or on a blockchain. But on the other hand, it's also all the programming logic is running on the website. If Amazon shuts the website down, or some virus attacked like a dyn.com, right, or the DNS resolution attack, then the whole internet got broken, then everything shuts down. So if any app that can be manipulated by a third party shuts down the website, which is not an app because you've sent $10,000 on a kitty, but then if the website run out of business, then the kitty is not running anymore.
So basically, there's failure points, right? There's this idea that the website is a centralized point of failure, that if somebody's able to shut down that website, you don't have the portal into the decentralized world, and therefore there's a problem.
Right. So then in that sense, it's not the dApp can still be manipulated, can still be shut down, right? Even though the smart contracts cannot be shut down, but the dApp can be shut down.
Yep.
And so then that's the when I study the dApps, the ecosystem, or the world computer, that's actually I realized that's a big loophole. So we need to fix. So that's where the Elastos come in and building the carrier network, and without letting currently, like the first tier is Bitcoin miners. The second tier actually is the DPoS machines. The DPoS, right? If you run a machine in Amazon Cloud, in Alibaba Clouds, Microsoft Azure Clouds, you're there just for a simple reason, for rewards. And you run a virtual machine, you don't even know what's running in the virtual machine on the Docker, right? So those are the actually waiting for tasks, waiting for jobs. The job could be hosting a web service of a website. And so then the programmer of the website cannot control the machine which runs the website. Because if you see today's website, it's written and operated by the same party. Then the website should be written by one party and operated by different parties.
What's the downside of that? So I see the upside or the advantage, right? What's the downside?
I don't really see a downside. That's really a great step forward because of we really should separate them.
And really what this does is it adds this sense of decentralization so that you don't have the same parties controlling the entire stack, kind of vertical integration of the services. Now you get more of a fragmented approach in this decentralized internet services. Is there any loss of efficiencies or anything like that? Or you feel like everything it still kind of works how it's supposed to work?
It should work out as supposed to work a little bit because of if you have website, right? Of course, it's a little bit more efficient. But given the current internet, given the fiber optics in and out of homes, given the virtual machines, because virtual machine itself lose some performance from the naked hardware. But then given the current state of art hardware, right? because humans don't evolve that fast. We can watch a movie, 60 frames or 30 frames per second, and 60 frames giving you a very smooth feeling. But after 50 frames, you don't really feel anymore. But the computers evolve. So then, given the current state-of-art hardware, the virtual machine layer lost some performance, let's say 10%, 20%, it's acceptable. And also, the other side, to put it, is if the websites without a fixed IP addresses, it's very hard for the DNS resolution attack, for the middleman attack, or spreading viruses. All those issues are gone, right? In return, lost some performance, but gain so much.
Yeah. And so if I'm a developer and I want to go build in this ecosystem or build these truly decentralized applications, I really have to think about, what's the application I'm building? How do I prevent there being a centralized website? How do I actually look at what cloud or hardware I'm using on the server side? Like there's a lot of different levels of complexity and kind of nuance here. How are people learning about this, right? Because it feels like most engineers grew up in a world where everything was centralized. And that's how they were taught. Where do you see that education happening, and how are people kind of learning about building in this new decentralized world?
Well, a lot of people, because of, as I said, Unix was from like early 80s. And basically a lot of young programmers, they're born without seeing something different. They see Windows and Linux, right? For their whole life, whole young life. And so first of all, the hard part is a change of mentality to be more open-minded. But on the other hand, given my background, because of right now, in those years, 1980s, the TCP/IP and operating system, they're intertwined. So if you look at today, all the internet gaming, all those applications who deal with internet, application programmers have to deal with internet themselves. To open up a socket and to send network packets. And also if a consumer lost their password, they blame on the users, right? Saying, okay, why don't you select a stronger password? So that's, if we're separating applications from the network, if we're separating using the DID and keep track of the digital signatures, and the user own their own data, they don't have to remember their password anymore, and the developers doesn't have to deal with network anymore, the programming would be much, much easier to write. Because they don't really have to think of those so-called transactions or internet timing issues. Those ones are handled by the system.
And so as you think through this, what's the end goal? Like, okay, everything that you're saying ends up getting built, it works. Where do we end up? What does that final stage look like?
I'll sum it up in two ways.
Okay.
Technically speaking, now, because people are saying IT industry evolved so fast for the past 70 years. And finally, we're at the stage, the IT industry in terms of what's network, what's programming model, what's the operating system. We're maturing, finally. And we name it Elastos, Elastos, meaning there's no more. Literally. If you look at, we're not really bragging, because if you look at Windows 10, no more Windows 11. That's according to Microsoft. No more Windows 11 means Windows 10 forever. When I name it Elastos in 2002, we kind of anticipated no more new operating systems because this is an operating system for the network. How can I force the peripherals, let's say the TV screen in your room, to update the device driver when I came in? Because the next speaker, should you download the device driver? If you have web services all over the world, how can you force those web services to upgrade or downgrade according to your OS? If you don't, if you are the ecosystem, right, and people species live and die. There's no single point we upgrade of a machine, right? Of the network. You upgrade machine, but you don't upgrade the whole network. So that's why when we design a network OS, it has to be the network of forever, right? That's technically. For the consumers, when we finally could have this kind of trading peer-to-peer, token for goods, and that's a new economy. Because the old web, everything's owned by cartels. All the books, all the movies. I mean, God forbid if Amazon out of business, all my ebooks, right, are gone. It's not like the old books I can put on my bookshelf. I own them, I can give it to friends. But my ebooks, I cannot give it or resell it. If we could have this peer-to-peer trading of digital assets, that's kind of a private ownership or capitalism for the first time on the internet. That's huge.
For sure. How does identity play into this? Right, you've mentioned a couple of times this like decentralized web and identity. Where does that play in?
Well, decentralized because on this new internet, we need to have some sort of identity. Because I know when I'm chatting, who I'm chatting with.
Does it have to be my real identity?
No, because that's another thing. If you look at it today, I just mentioned the passwords. If you look at your driver's license, it has a driver license number. It all has your birthday. It has your gender. It has a lot of more information. But which is, again, not enough if you want to travel abroad. You need a passport. Or if you want to go to a hospital, you need some more, a different set of IDs. And in some cases, you want to anonymous. Sometimes you want to be real name. So then a ID, meaning just a cryptic hash, all right, 256 in length, the digit. Then, given that you have multiple profiles.
Okay.
And then, so you want to sign in with your real name profile, or you want to sign in with your alias, or you want to, then it's up to you. But nevertheless, you sign with your private keys. If you sign, you give information, let's say if you log into Facebook, or some other apps, you log in with Facebook ID credential, then what I'm saying is, in theory, Facebook could impersonate you, right? Maybe they don't, but then they could. They're saying, okay,
you're trusting Facebook, the centralized
Facebook
company, to use your credentials only when you've said use my credentials for websites that you've said it. But at any point, they could go in
to log into the other apps which use a Facebook login.
Yep,
correct. And but for the DID, just given the number, given your gender, your name to Facebook, the Facebook still does not have your private key. So it cannot impersonate you to log into some other websites.
Got it. And so what you're talking about is I create an identity, and that identity has almost multiple layers to it. So I want to act anonymous. I want to act pseudonymous. I have pseudonymity for multiple, services or various verticals. Then I've got my real identity with minimal information shared. I've got my real identity, with a lot of information shared. And then I've got kind of full blown, here's everything I got that's real. All of those different types of identities play into various aspects of my life or services I use, but I'm in control of choosing which one I use.
Yes, because if you tell me your name, right, I'll validate through your public key, which is public information. I know you're the only one you could sign it off. So that's really, really critical to this new internet.
Yeah. And some of this too is there's a lot in crypto, I think, where people are trying to solve some of these problems around, one of the examples I always use is these like zero knowledge proofs, right? This whole idea of if you go into a bar and I show you my ID, all you need to know is, am I 21 or not? You actually don't even need to know how old I am, right? But instead I just showed you my name, my address, all these different things. Well, in the future, there will be some way to just say thumbs up, yes, 21 or over, thumbs down, no. that is very simplistic, right, in terms of how identification is used in a scenario. But that same type of mechanism applies almost every single time you use ID, right? How many times do you go somewhere and people say, show me your driver's license?
Sure.
But it's not for driving. They just want to know that that's really you, right? A photo and a name. And what cracks me up is if you've ever gone to the airport or the bank or anything and they say, show it to me, if you have a photo where you had a shaved head and now you have hair, or you used to have a beard and now you don't, the person doesn't know, right? They're just happy that someone has an ID that kind of sort of looks like the person, and then they approve it, which probably isn't the most secure thing to do, right?
Yeah. But ID is only is only one part of the story, right? Because that's why we built this new smart web. It's not just the ID, but also given your ID, given the wallet, given the capability to run those virtual machines, so you can conduct business. You can do something, right?
How give us kind of a status update of how things are going, right? So we understand how it works now. Any milestones or data that you can share in terms of how it's going?
So far, this project has been around 2.5 years. We started in August 2017, and we started we started the main chain in December of 2017, and then August of 2018 we started merge mining, and also we implemented the first versions of DID. Currently, we're trying to do the second incarnation, which is W3C compliant, and we have already pretty much finished the peer-to-peer decentralized peer-to-peer network. We have around more than 200,000 nodes running the peer-to-peer network, which is not the blockchain peer-to-peer, which is the really does all the heavy lifting. We call it decentralized carrier because it does all the logistics. Like AT&T, Verizon does all this data transformation, or the video voice transformation. And also on top of it, we're going to build virtual phones, virtual machines, right? Launch them on demand. So then that's where the first one would be the browser. The second one would be some macro websites running on top of those set-top boxes. 200,000 of them right now running. So we'll have some of them being the docking stations, and which is will start from early January next year, and we expect 2020 would be exciting year, like 1993 all over again.
Yeah, it is. I think for the entire industry, 2020 and 2021 are going to be worth paying attention to for sure. Where before I get into the rapid fire questions, where can people find more about Elastos and find you on the internet, on the centralized internet?
There's a elastos.org.
Okay.
And then there's a cyberrepublic.org. And then for developers, there's a elastos.academy. So they can find all the technical
specifications and stuff.
And
got it.
Training courses as well.
Very cool. What about yourself? Where can people find you?
Well, find me online. But also, I personally, if I came to this country 84, I was not a teenager at that time. I was doing graduate studies. So I try to, because we are going to build a new internet next year, starting early next year, right? So the internet definitely is beyond one person. I'm really, really happy and feel relieved. The team really is doing we have decentralized teams all over the world, and they're self-motivated to build this new world. And so my role is kind of getting smaller and smaller, diminished throughout the year. So I kind of planned for myself. We promised to the community, because for 4 years to build this new internet, when we started in August 2017. So I'll be around until at least August 2021.
Are you planning an exit? Are you going to leave?
Well, I would think Satoshi would be a good role model.
Got it. Very, very interesting. Rapid fire questions. What's the most important company in crypto other than your own?
Well, I think Ethereum is. We learned a lot.
Why Ethereum?
Because of the work computer and also the smart contracts. Currently, we do have the sidechain running, the Ethereum sidechain running on top of Elastos. Verbatim.
Interesting.
Almost all, the older versions of Ethereum EVM, all of the smart contracts are running. So we should give our thanks to Ethereum community.
Very cool. What's the one regulation or law that you would change or improve if you could, either here or abroad?
Well, I think in the U.S., of course, is more of so-called bragged about legal. Everything is according to law. So many lawyers and so many things, right? And crypto is a new thing, and I hope the Congress folks should be more open-minded.
Yeah, that's fair. What's your most controversial thought in crypto? Like, what do you believe that everyone else disagrees with you on?
I don't believe blockchains can create a ecosystem by its own.
Okay, explain.
They need a second tier, because the blockchain for performance, for basically a blockchain is one computer. Whether you call it world computer, it doesn't really matter. One computer won't solve internet problems. Internet meaning a network of computers, right? So anybody trying to build a ecosystem or dapps on one blockchain is bound to fail.
I think that's pretty controversial. What's the most important book you've ever read?
Well, I read Taoism books, teachings, or Shakespeare when I was in college to impress girls, and I still believe that's important.
You read Shakespeare to impress girls in college? What was your favorite book?
Well, all those, I read them all, put it this way.
Very cool. Aliens, you believe? Are they real?
I'm agnostic either way.
No. You can't take the agnostic position. You either believe or you don't believe. What do you think?
Well, I don't really believe.
You don't believe.
But I do believe, a lot of people believe that inspired us, right?
Okay.
To pursue.
So you think that aliens probably aren't real, but the promise that they may be out there inspired us to go look.
Right. Because, let's say, going out of space and doing a lot of scientific research, that's important, but I personally don't necessarily believe it's there, right?
Okay, why?
It's similar to the way we grow up. A lot of those stories or teachings, and I won't go explicit, and turned out, right, it's... I don't believe.
Oh, so you think aliens are like a religion, basically?
No. But then the way we grow up,
yep,
right? A lot of things we were taught, and but then on the other hand, doesn't really stop us from come to the U.S., to study, to keep on driving ourselves.
For sure. So, do you think we went to the moon?
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Just checking. And then I always end with you getting to ask me one question. What one question do you have for me?
If you get to meet Alien or Satoshi, which one do you pick?
Oh, if I got to meet Alien or Satoshi, definitely Alien. I actually think we are much better off not knowing who Satoshi is. I hope we never find out who he, she, or they is. I think part of the beauty and strength of Bitcoin is the fact that we don't know who that person is, right, or that group of people. And so I don't want to be the person who ruins it, frankly.
I see. I would think, it's fascinating for him to tell the life story, why.
Yes. So like really if they revealed themselves, then I think there'd be a ton of really cool things to find out. Right. But I want nothing to do with being the one to reveal put in that position. And also, like, go grab a beer with an alien, right? And I got a lot of questions for the alien. Like, we start with like, where are you from and how long did it take to get here? would be two at the top of the list.
But if you see how far the telescope, those gigantic telescope have already. Millions of, I don't know, it may not be millions of light years, right? It'll be forever for the aliens to travel.
Yeah, but if you think about, that's just our galaxy, right? And there's
Yeah.
other galaxies. One of my favorite things in 2019 that I read was somebody was able to identify that there was two galaxies colliding with each other. So, like, what happens then? I don't really know. The idea that galaxies could collide is pretty crazy. And then they basically, if I remember the article correctly, and I probably don't, but I think it was something like, 2 or 4 billion years from now, our galaxy is going to collide with that galaxy.
So everybody's doomed by that.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe, right? So I think that we just don't understand how big the world really is. Yeah. But if I had to choose, definitely choosing an alien over Satoshi. So
all right,
we'll see. Listen, thank you so much for coming in and doing this. I really appreciate it. And obviously, I think a lot of the ideas and kind of ethos of what you guys are doing is shared across the Bitcoin and crypto community in terms of kind of this decentralized future, right? Taking back a lot of the self-sovereignty and identity, etc. And ultimately, I think that the kind of that censorship resistance, whether it's in money or in infrastructure, is going to play a pretty big part in the world moving forward. And so you guys are one of many teams that are working on this, and I think it's pretty exciting. So thanks for coming in and explaining
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to do it again in the future once you guys get farther along.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.